Welcome to Two Fuse Wrestling fantasy booking episode. We decided that we would fantasy book probably the greatest streak. Well, Bruno's streak was crazy,
Yeah.
but the second greatest streak, Goldberg's streak of, I don't even know how many wins he finally got to.
173.
Okay, 173. So we're fantasy booking how we would have had his streak come to an end, because I think everyone agrees the way it did was shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
So if you want to start yours,
Yeah,
how
sure.
you would do it.
So, since it is fantasy booking, in my fantasy, I'm gonna let Goldberg get to 173, and it's gonna end at Starrcade 98. I'm just gonna change the guy and a little bit of the story going into it. But for the fantasy part, I'm gonna pretend that Randy Savage doesn't get hurt early in 98, because Savage and Goldberg never had a match one-on ever, not even like tag or anything. So you kind of would get, which I'm gonna have Savage in the streak, but that would be kind of like a dream match, a match that never happened. And I'm also going to pretend that there was no Wolfpack, the NWO doesn't split. So you'd still have Goldberg beat Hogan for the title on Nitro, and then Hogan could go away for a little bit while he's gone. I would have Savage run the NWO kind of the way he would want. And then everything, you could do whatever you want, but when you get to Halloween Havoc 98, I would still do Goldberg versus DDP, because that was a good match and also a big match, as that was like their two up and coming babyface stars right there. So that was a really good big match for them. But in the early 90s, they had a triple threat that had Sting, Vader, and the Guardian Angel. And it was a cool concept where instead of all three wrestling at once, they did a coin flip, and the odd man out went to the back, and then they had a singles match with the other two, and then the winner of that went on to face Sting in another match. So I would do the same thing, and the three guys I would do would be Bret Hart, who came in 97, Randy Savage, and Sting. And then I would start off with Sting and Savage, and because it would kind of tease that Sting-Bret Hart feud that everybody was kind of wanting at that time, and you could save that for Starrcade instead of wasting it at the Halloween Havoc. Savage would beat Sting, then beat Hart to earn the title shot at Starrcade. The pay-per-view after, you could have Hogan come back, and I would do Hogan and Macho Man against Sting or DDP and Goldberg in the main event. And then finally at Starrcade, like I said, you have Sting and Bret Hart. You could do DDP and Hogan, which would give DDP like a rub and a big moment one-on-one with Hogan. And then in the main event, I would have Macho Man always countering the jackhammer, because he was an actual really good in-ring performer. So just always have him counter that jackhammer.
That, for Macho Man as a performer, the match in my life that I've probably seen the most is his match with Steamboat at WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I go back and watch that a lot.
Yeah, that's like, that's an all-time match right there. I mean, everyone's seen that. But yeah, always countering the jackhammer. And then I would have NWO interference, and Savage being like, I don't want to win it this way. So he helps Goldberg fight off the NWO, and then you continue the match for a little bit longer. And then like at WrestleMania 7, Savage hit Ultimate Warrior with like 3 flying elbow drops. I do the same thing here, but then ultimately he would pin Goldberg and end the streak. And then that ends your last pay-per-view at 98. You'd have Savage as the world champion, Goldberg's 173-1, and the NWO's dead. So going into 99, you have a lot of like cool dynamic things you could kind of play off of and see where you want to go. And also another reason I would do this is it gives Savage a one-up on Hogan for a little bit, because he was WWF champion, but then he would lose it to Hogan. He never got a big win over Hogan. This, Goldberg beat Hogan, but then Savage beat Goldberg, so at least it's something for Savage to have over Hogan.
I do like that Macho Man having that over Hogan, because obviously he was never going to beat a guy over Hogan, but being the guy that beats Goldberg, that's pretty legit.
Going into the next year, if you wanted to do Savage and Hogan, DDP's coming off a big match, you got Sting and Bret Hart, you have a lot of like variables and a lot of new stuff. And say, you don't have to say NWO's dead or whatever, but I mean, maybe Hogan revives it and you could have somebody new join it or whatever. I mean, but you'd have a lot more going on than what they ended up doing.
Yeah. they would rush stuff in WCW. It felt like just to get ratings. Where
Yeah.
it's like you drag some stuff out.
Yeah.
I like the idea of DDP and Goldberg as a tag team when they were such huge baby faces
Yeah.
to set up the feud going into Starrcade.
And then you would get, they had the Mega Powers in the 80s. Now it's like the NWO Mega Powers. So it's still Savage and Hogan, but it's like evil Savage and Hogan.
It works. For me, how I would beat the streak is I would just I'm using Hogan to get as many stars as I possibly can, and I let Sting go over Hogan. I definitely want that moment to happen. Just do it. It doesn't have to wait a whole year before the match. Let Sting win earlier. Hogan gets it back. Goldberg gets his moment. That pop, I want that pop with Goldberg beating Hogan for the belt. When Brett comes in, though, his first match I won against Goldberg. Like, capitalize on the fact that Bret Hart has all this noise to his name with Montreal and have him be the guy that beats the streak with Goldberg. I love the idea of the steel plate that he did with the in his stomach. So when Goldberg did that, so I would do that during the match. The referee doesn't catch it, whatever. But Bret, like, you know, Bret sells shit. He does an awesome story. So he could sell that the spear still kind of hurt, so it took him a second to get the cover. Goldberg kicks out. So then we're like, holy shit, Goldberg's a beast. He kicked out of that. And then Bret just goes to work. Just rinse and repeat. The same formula he did with Austin. You made Austin a star. Now it's your time to make Goldberg a star.
It would kind of not, the Austin thing makes sense, but he had matches with Diesel where he just like broke him down. He, you know, Diesel's so much bigger than Hart, so you could do that where he just like works that leg and just like beats down this big monster.
And with the leg is how I would go about Bret winning too, is when Goldberg goes for the jackhammer, his leg gives out because Bret worked on it. Bret rolls him up, gets the win. So Bret still can be a face with this. He's just this smart, strategic guy.
Yeah.
And then Goldberg's like, hey, man, you got lucky. And Bret's like, well, let's run it back. Hogan weasels his way in there. We have a triple threat. During the triple threat, NWO, because that's WCW, you let Hogan cheat, and he uses the newest member of NWO, Big Papa Pump. You make it this big deal, and Big Papa Pump just beats the fuck out of Goldberg. Like, I seen people make fun of the hype for a Goldberg and Big Papa Pump feud when they said this time it's real, like WCW was breaking kayfabe. But to me, I was like, dude, this is badass, Goldberg and Big Papa Pump. I want to get to it. I want to make Big Papa Pump a star. You can do a tag team with NWO Kurt Hennig and Big Papa Pump against Goldberg and Bret Hart for the tag titles.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And then eventually you get to a feud of Goldberg and Big Papa Pump by themselves. Bret can run with the United States title in a feud with Hennig, Benoit, just go back and forth with the workers there, Jericho maybe. And then Hogan makes another star in DDP. Like, he had the feud with the tag title, tag matches with Rodman, Malone, and DDP. I want the belt on Hogan on all the TV shows. He keeps winning through these tag matches. It feels like DDP's never going to break through, like Goldberg wasn't going to break through and Sting wasn't going to break through.
Yeah.
Breaks through. We get that pop. And now you have Big Papa Pump a star, DDP a star, Sting a star, all off of Hogan, Goldberg. And then Goldberg, not only is he a mainstream star for the win, I feel like he gets that credibility that Hart just made him, hey, I can go in a match.
Yeah, and I like it. It plays up that excellence of execution that Bret Hart always called himself. And then I like how we both kind of wanted DDP to like get a moment with Hogan. Like, they had those tag matches, but as far as I know, they never had like a big one-on-one match. And I feel like that would have been like, that would have got DDP kind of over that edge if he got to work with Hogan like one-on-one.
I feel like the pop would, because at first I thought DDP was cool as a kid, but I couldn't remember it. And people on Reddit was saying that his reactions were like one of the best back then. So I went back and was looking at stuff, and his pops were crazy. And then they freak out about the diamond cutter pops like Randy Orton's pop. So I'm like, if he beats Hogan, like, that pop is going to be just like Goldberg, like, huge.
Oh yeah.
And the whole thing with WCW, like not only did they fumble, I mean they fumbled a lot of stuff, but the streak was fumbled, and I feel like by Hart beating the streak, you also don't fumble Bret Hart either. Like they fumbled him. Like there's no excuse to fuck up
That
the wrestling goat,
that would clear up like two of their, because probably their two biggest fumbles were the streak and Bret Hart,
and you
and
fix it right there.
that fixes both of them at the same time.
All right. So let us know in the comments who you would have had beat Goldberg's streak.